5G technology, with its speed, low latency, and capacity to handle a massive number of devices simultaneously, will not only enhance the way we communicate, but also revolutionize industries such as healthcare and transportation. It also represents the backbone of future technology advancements, enabling groundbreaking applications to drive economic growth and improve our quality of life. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and joining me today is T-Mobile's National Senior Executive for State and Local Government Strategy, Lloyd Levine, who will share some of his insights on the 5G revolution. Lloyd, thank you so much for joining us. And let me start by asking, 5G is often described as transformational, but can you elaborate on how 5G is actually poised to transform our lives and work, particularly from the perspective of state and local government?
Thank you, Wyatt, for that question. My pleasure to be here today, and that's a question I actually get quite often. Part of it is because there is no 5G standard. A lot of people just think it's marketing: 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. But 5G is 11 to 15 times faster, so exponentially faster than 4G. So 5G is broadband. It's not broadband equivalent or broadband like, it is broadband. And the difference becomes it is ubiquitous broadband. So if you go back a few years prior to 5G, the mindset was, wireless, a wireline. You had, wires to nodes, wires to your house, wires to office buildings. And then you had great speeds when you were in those locations. If you're driving around in your car, if you're walking around, if you're, in a restaurant, you're on 4G. And 4G wasn't bad, but it wasn't transformational. With 5G, essentially what T-Mobile did is we built a dome or an umbrella over a city, and any device anywhere under that umbrella has broadband. So really, we've broken away from facility-based broadband. So to give you an example, I can, in my neighborhood in Sacramento, I've been walking the dog, and because I work for T-Mobile, I use some of the independent speed test apps just to see what's going on, and I got 750 megabits per second on download speed while walking the dog. I've gotten, in New York City, 800, almost 900 megabits per second. In Memphis last year, I got 500 plus megabits per second. So, and these are walking around or in a bus or wherever it might be. These aren't tied to a fixed location. So, it takes the ability to receive broadband speed data and moves it away from being tied to any fixed location. Does that answer the question pretty well there?
No, it certainly does. And so my next question then is, what significant changes can we expect and do you foresee in various industries, and again, particularly for state and local government?
Well, this is fantastic. I actually can see just a myriad of changes coming based on the ability to receive these speeds anywhere. In the future, you can think about connectivity to a car. So a car moves around a city, and in fact, this is something that T-Mobile is currently doing down in Georgia with the Department of Driver Services in Georgia. You can take your driver's license test without an examiner in the car. It's conducted by two-way high-def audio video system. That wouldn't have been possible on 4G. We're not running a wire to the car that's going to follow you around the city. These are those types of technologies. Any video application, because obviously video requires high speed, low latency. All of those video applications will be now able to be transacted, anywhere. If you think about more mundane things, manufacturing. Manufacturing facilities in remote areas can use 5G instead of running wires. Anywhere you might need broadband speed is now opened to 5G technology, and it allows for that transformation. It allows you to move around when you use it, whatever the application is. The nice thing is we're not limited by any one individual's imagination. Just like we've seen throughout the computing revolution, if you give people technology like this, they will develop the applications. The people walking around everyday life, the businesses, the individuals who are experiencing the challenges of being limited by 4G speeds will now have the ability to say, hey, now I'm going to create an app that does whatever it might be. And I'll conclude the thought with this. We didn't have Uber and Lyft until we had 4G. 4G is what enabled Uber and Lyft. There was the demand, obviously, but 4G is what enabled people to be able to actually send the data fast enough to utilize those services. Who knows what happens with 5G?
Let's talk a little about that. In what ways do you imagine that if public sector workers, public servants are no longer tethered to their offices so much, how do you envision that government operations and services, might really evolve in a 5G world?
Well, I could see it just a whole host of ways that this could change things. T-Mobile has an entire IoT division, Internet of Things. I assume everybody listening knows what that stands for. Internet of Things. So, hypothetically, imagine if you had to send somebody out to conduct inspections. What is the cost to have somebody drive several hours to inspect some sort of facility? What if we could mount cameras? And have 24/7 eyes on whatever it might be, and just utilize 5G. Maybe we wouldn't run coax to that one facility because it didn't make any sense to run fiber or coaxial cable out there. But now that it's under the umbrella or dome of connectivity, we can easily mount some cameras out there and have, observe it whenever we want to. Hypothetically, if you have to observe a small dam on a small river, maybe we just use video surveillance for that instead of sending somebody out there to inspect it. We can always send somebody out if the video determines we need to. Think about all of the different operations of a city, garbage trucks, different fleets that they might have, the ability to manage and control those fleets from one location. In New York City, all of the traffic signals run on our network, either as the primary or as the backup communications method. So you just start to think about different circumstances where you're able to, to track or coordinate, because you don't have to provide wires, because you've got this dome, and anywhere you are under that dome, you have that connectivity. And regardless, if you've established that connectivity, regardless of where you move. So, if you've got, say, fleet vehicles at a large city and you have a water main break, the ability to dispatch assets based on knowing their location, because you've got data receivers connected to trucks. So you no longer have to rely on radio systems. Hey, there's a truck around the corner. How fast can we get that truck to the scene of the water main break instead of calling one from the dispatch center? There's all sorts of different logistical cases that we can imagine. Firefighting certainly is another one where access to reliable imagery and data will completely transform the way firefighters are able to respond to fires.
Well, I appreciate your describing so many applications. Can you share some real world use cases where you've seen public sector agencies or organizations, really demonstrate benefits or advantages or time saving, et cetera, that you could describe?
Sure. I mean, as I said earlier, the driver's licenses in Georgia, I actually think I have two great examples. Driver's licenses in Georgia was a pandemic solution. They needed to administer driver's tests and didn't want to put the examiners in the cars and vice versa, potentially, spreading disease. So there's a case where they were able to utilize technology to still administer the tests because they have low latency, high speed data. So you're able to visually monitor the driver, monitor the car, have that communication back and forth, and they're still doing it to this day. They found actually that they're saving money on their workers' comp costs because they've pulled the drivers out of the cars. As I've joked before, if your job description is "I ride around with unlicensed teenage drivers all day long," your workers' comp costs are going to be high. But I've got to say, probably my favorite one, because of the real impact, is up in Washington, the state of Washington. Their Department of Natural Resources partnered with T-Mobile and another partner of ours, a company called Pano AI. Pano AI is a camera manufacturing company. They developed their cameras in our 5G labs, and they're now deployed across the state of Washington to reduce wildfires. So what these cameras do, they're mounted high up on ridge lines, on utility poles, on our facilities, anywhere they have a great vantage point and can scan the horizon. And they are trained, their AI is trained to detect wildfires, and it's really, really good. It is purpose-built for the sole purpose of detecting wildfires, and that's it. The idea is if we can reduce the response time to the wildfires, you can keep them from spreading. Well, the commissioner of public lands up in Washington set a goal this year of keeping 90% of the wildfires under 10 acres. And her strategy for doing this was a combination of T-Mobile's cameras and network and her own resources. So far, they've been able to keep 95% of the nearly 2,000 wildfires that have started in Washington. 95% of those have been under 10 acres because they're able to spot them so much faster utilizing the technology instead of relying on somebody to report them. Somebody has to be in the area. Somebody has to see the smoke. The cameras are already there, already looking. And that's a great use case for 5G, because if you think of the number of cameras deployed to cover these state and national forests, we're not running, hundreds of miles of fiber to every single camera. This is only possible because T-Mobile's 5G network is so vast, the cameras can connect to the network wirelessly and send those pictures back.
That's a great example. Thank you. And then lastly, Lloyd, what recommendations would you offer leaders at state and local agencies to, effectively address the challenges that they face, but also to really maximize the advantages of solutions like 5G?
That's really an excellent question. 5G is just in its infancy. It didn't really exist prior to 2018, 2019, 2020 in any meaningful way. And it really got its jumpstart in 2020 with the merger between T-Mobile and Sprint when we acquired Sprint's network assets. So we have multiple flavors of 5G. We have our extended range in rural areas and our ultra capacity in the urban suburban areas. The ultra capacity 5G gets 400 megabits per second average speeds right now. We're on track by the end of this year to cover about 300 million Americans with that ultra capacity 5G. When you add in the extended range, we're over 320 to 325 million Americans covered by some stripe of 5G. Additionally, we have about 98 to 99% of all interstate highways covered with 5G. So when you're thinking about problems to solve, these are problems that are only just emerging, or I guess the problems are there. The ability to solve them with 5G is just emerging. I was talking to somebody recently who was letting me know our truck transportation system is virtually unmonitored, untracked. Well, that's something that maybe states and the federal government might be able to do utilizing 5G. So what I would recommend is, the biggest challenge is break the wireline mentality. We in this country for so long have had the mentality, and understandably so, that mobile technology, cellular technology is inferior to wireline technology. And I get it, because until 5G, it was. But we now are in an era where we have to start considering alternate solutions and viewing wireless solutions as viable. In fact, wireless solutions, as we've discussed, can provide solutions that other technologies can't. So reach out to us. I mean, that would be the number one thing I would say to do. And I know that sounds a bit self-serving, but we have a whole host of internal experts on the technology side and on the government side. My background is actually in government. I was a member of the legislature here in California. I chaired our Committee on Utilities and Commerce, so I had regulatory authority or statutory authority over all of these technologies. And so we've got a whole host of technology experts and government experts in-house to partner with, to help you understand the technologies and understand how they can be brought to bear to solve those problems, those challenges you're facing. So that would be my number one suggestion, is reach out to T-Mobile, and then, as I said a minute ago, and then understand that wireless technology is available now to help you solve those problems, that by utilizing wireless technology, you're not utilizing an inferior solution.
Well, Lloyd Levine, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights into the realm of 5G and how it's poised to really help state and local government really take it to the next level, if you will. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.